guys,
Hey.
Today we are here having a Beanie Talk.
Actually, it's a Beanie discussion.
You guessed it. Today we're talking about arguing. How do we argue well? How do we argue with each other? Especially in this current political climate of arguing storms. We have a lot of challenges that we are looking at in terms of just how do we argue? How do we take these conversations and, learn something from it?
Yeah. The thing about arguing is that you tend to give grace to people that you don't know as well. It's a little bit easier versus someone you know really well. So we were actually talking about, we probably argue the worst out of, anyone else that we come into contact with because we just spend so much time together and we know each other so well. So for you guys, it could be siblings, your parents, your best friend. The thing is that we started talking about our different argument styles, and I'm very detail oriented.
And I love generalizing and getting to the general point very quickly and ignoring some of the details because I feel like they're irrelevant. So we tend to kind of butt heads at that point because I'll say, "Oh, you know what I mean." She goes, "No, I don't." Tell me what you mean. I get frustrated sometimes. She gets frustrated.
It happens.
And that's where we need the Bible to help us.
Yeah, we have very different styles of seeing and perceiving things, and that's okay. God made us to be different and to have differences in people, and that actually reflects His image and glory. It's just, how do we deal with that? How do we reconcile with that?
Yeah. How do we argue well together and come out, not being frustrated at each other all the time?
Yeah.
All right. So today we're looking at the Bible verse James 1:19, which says, "Be quick to listen, slow to anger, slow to speak." I think those words are so powerful, especially as we come across people using yelling, screaming, raising your voice, trying to interrupt you, and basically finding ways that are kind of the cheap argument winners. They don't actually make a point. They don't actually progress anything. They just try and say, "Oh, I'm right. This is how I'm going to win," and show you you're wrong.
So that is the wrong way to argue, obviously. And we should know that our goal in a discussion or a spat or having a difference with someone shouldn't be just to be right or to win, which is what the world or culture often tells you should be your goal. But it should actually be to seek to understand, to be relational with that person, because it's really not worth winning the argument if you lose the relationship. That's the key.
Yeah, even James, the writer of this book, Jesus' brother, he doesn't really appear very much in Jesus' life before this. We don't get to see Jesus interact with him much. And so we find that he actually he probably had a lot of struggles, even with Jesus, and just conflict, because
they're brothers.
Yeah, they're brothers. When your brother grows up being like, "Yeah, I'm the Messiah. What's up?" That's you probably get frustrated. You probably it's kind of there's a lot going on there, and that's kind of crazy. And so it's easy to kind of have a lot of conflict there. And so we see that James is the one writing this. Be slow to listen. Even when you think they're crazy, even when you think they're wrong, be there, be willing to listen, be willing to hear their opinions. And James is pointing that out probably from a place that he knows very well. Especially coming from someone who is right all the time, no matter what.
Jesus, perfect.
He can't be wrong, and James can get frustrated at that. And so James teaches us a great lesson about that from his own life.
Well, and the thing is, too, about James is that he actually came to respect Jesus as Messiah. And so he's writing this verse that we're looking about being slow to anger and quick to listen from that place of knowing that he is actually the servant of Jesus. I think he starts out that book by saying, James, the servant of Jesus. That's how he introduces himself, which is not easy when it was his brother who he could be in conflict with. So that's one application for us, is that it's easier to win the relationship and not be about winning the argument if you're humble, coming from a place of humility, seeking to understand the other person and be open to what they have to say. Maybe even if you're discussing with someone who doesn't share your same political or religious views, where even though you think that maybe what they believe still isn't for you, hearing them out is such a loving thing to do. I mean, it's what Jesus did with people he came into contact to, and it's what he calls us to do, to be relational and listen to and love other people despite our differences.
Yeah, and I think for us, just being able to apply that in the heat of an argument can be really hard. But some just a really basic kind of 3-step process that can really, really help is if we remember James 1:19, be slow to listen, or be quick to listen, slow to anger, slow to speak. Be willing to sit there and listen, even if you totally disagree and you know they're wrong or whatever. Just sit there and listen and hear them out. If you're having trouble listening, pray. Just pray in that moment. Just take a second, kind of pause, pray, and just take it back and be like, okay, Lord, give me the strength, give me the resolve to just sit through and listen to this. And the last one is empathize with them. Most people come at these arguments from a pretty plausible area. They have experience, they have things that have shaped them, and so hearing that can really help us understand why they think that way and really give us a better understanding. And so I think it helps us learn, but also it helps us just argue better, because we actually hear what they have to say. We're not saying like, well, yeah, I know you said all that, but this is what's right. Instead, we take what they've said and we can say, okay, well, like, I kind of agree with that. I can see where you're coming from, but this is kind of where I'm coming from. And so then you present your side, and it comes out a lot more relationally positive than just trying to throw out your side as the primary argument.
Right. It's really important to listen to people, but then also to share your side as like partially experiential, but also being like, this is where I'm coming from, so that they gain a better understanding of you too. So it is slow to speak. You still do speak, but it's just like giving that person all the time that they need, or kind of the first priority almost, in order to facilitate that discussion. The other thing about having discussions is that when you're praying about listening, you can also be praying about the kindest way to say something. Like Jesus is said as coming to us full of grace and truth. And then also another spot in the Bible, it talks about speaking the truth in love. And so like, what does that mean? What does that look like to be kind to someone, even when you're saying your side of things, or just saying your opinion? Like, how do you say that in the gentlest way possible? How do you do that in a loving way? And it's not easy necessarily always, but it takes that kind of like second to breathe, think through things, and not be reactive, but instead respond. There's a big difference between those two things. Reactive is like the first thing that comes to your mind, not having the best filter, that kind of thing, versus responding is taking it all in, taking a second to say, like, God, how do you want me to phrase this? Let this be your words, not my words. Especially if you're like witnessing, or you're talking to a non-believer, or you're just talking with a brother or sister in Christ, because it's so important to keep the relationship and reconcile, even if you've made a mistake, and be the first to apologize. That the Bible says that when we're sacrificing, so I think this is in the Old Testament, or worshiping, like picture yourself, you're singing a worship song, you realize like, oh my gosh, I have a conflict with my sibling. God says it's so important in the Bible that he says, stop everything, stop what you're doing, and go and be reconciled to them. So, it really is, God is a relational God, and he made us to be relational. He made us to be loving towards others and reflect that part of his glory.
Just to wrap up, guys, just like the big theme here is, even in arguing, you can't change the way people argue or the way people go about that, but you can choose and control how you respond to that and how you argue back, how you treat them and how you treat their ideas and their thoughts, and that way, like, Christ calls us to be loving and like speak truth in love, and that way we can treat their thoughts and their opinions with love and respect, while also giving them truth and letting them know what we believe and what we believe to be true. And so I think that's just a challenge for you guys this week. When you're facing someone who really just wants to win the argument and really pushing their point, be willing to listen, even though it might suck. Be willing to just sit in that and hear their side and still respect them and still find the value in what they're saying, because there's always value in their opinions, even if they're not exactly right. So yeah, I just challenge you guys, be willing to listen. Don't let your anger take control. Don't let your frustration take control of the conversation. Like, work with it, pray with it, empathize with them, and yeah.
Know when to speak and when not to speak, because sometimes it's just not worth it. Sometimes it's just not worth having an argument or saying your side of things. It's better just to keep your opinion to yourself a lot of times. But if it is something you believe strongly about and you have a good relationship with that person, you feel like you can say it in a way that's loving and kind, then do that, but listen first.
Yeah. All right, guys. Have a good week.
Yeah.
May the Lord bless you, and we look forward to seeing you this upcoming week at youth group.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.